everyone. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona, and we are at the Pima Air Museum. And it's a kind of a cold, windy day out here, but we're going to do the best we can. It's a really great museum for those of you who've never been out here. This is so awesome. I mean, it's so huge you can't even see it all in one day. So let's go inside and check it out. Well, here we go. We're just going to walk on inside, check things out. Look at this. Wow. Right up front, right flyer. Obviously, this is a replica because the real one is in the Smithsonian. Pretty cool, huh? Look at all these aircraft in here. And like I say, this museum is so huge you can't see it all in one day. It's just totally spectacular. This is just the inside exhibits here. Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, here's some of Rutan's work up here on one of his aircraft. Looking at the engine of a Curtiss Hawk. Very early model, beautiful plane. Look at that. Here we have the classic Huey gunship, Vietnam era. And they still fly today. Those big, massive rotor blades. For those of you who've ever seen one or hear one fly, you know, the tips of the blade actually break the sound barrier. That's why you hear that popping noise when they're flying overhead. Here's just a quick look inside the Huey gunship, cockpit area. And just above, this is a Waco biplane. Very popular. Even today, they still rebuild them, still fly them. Beautifully well decorated McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom. An absolutely popular aircraft used in the Vietnam War as well as many other services. Hugely versatile, can land on a carrier, can take off from any kind of airstrip, carry all kinds of ordnances, and performed all kinds of tasks from fighter aircraft to bomber and attack aircraft. Unbelievable. What I especially like is the anhedral horizontal stabilizer in the back here. That just gave it some really wicked maneuverabilities that most other aircraft did not have at the time. And it could definitely outperform some of the MiG aircraft of the era. Absolutely spectacular. And there's the business end, looking back up into the afterburners. And right behind me here, here's the tail hook. So that way it can do carrier landing. Here's a nice shot of a twin-engine Beech. Very popular aircraft, especially in the 30s. And up behind it is a gyroplane. Unlike a helicopter, a gyroplane actually has a motor in the back that pushes the aircraft forward, and of course the rotor blades spin around to generate the lift, but there's no direct drive from the pusher motor to the main rotor shaft of the blades. Okay, folks, for all of you that are into Top Gun, here's the F-14 Tomcat. This aircraft needs no introduction. This is the SR-71 Blackbird. Beautiful aircraft, fastest aircraft in the world. This has to be one of my most favorite aircraft. Made of titanium, that was actually bought from Russia so we could go spy on them. But the SR-71 flies so high, so fast, that the airplane actually becomes red hot when it's in the air. And so therefore they had to use a different kind of fuel called JP4 to actually fuel the aircraft. And of course, whenever you saw it sitting on the ground, it'd be dripping all over the tarmac until the thing got airborne. And of course, the titanium would expand and seal up all the fuel tanks so that way it could, you know, quit drifting and all that. Really amazing aircraft, way ahead of its time. And of course, Kelly knew what he was doing when he made this thing. It's just incredible. This is one of the specialized engines of the SR-71, a Pratt & Whitney J58 engine. A little bit larger than J57, and this is what actually propelled it. Of course, what really made the thing go was its afterburner as well as their ramjet features that were also deployed in the engine compartment. Here we are looking back at the afterburner. Look at that. Absolutely cool. Now we're looking at one of the landing gear here. If you notice the wheels here, they don't have air. That's because the aircraft flies so high that the tires would actually explode. And plus the heat and everything would also cause the tires to melt as well. So this is actually solid rubber down here, solid rubber. And of course, obviously the landings are probably a little rugged, I would imagine, even though they do have some air shocks here. But that's how that thing worked. Yeah, because you couldn't have air at 100,000 feet, otherwise it would just pop. So behind me is one of the intakes to the SR-71. You can see this cone cylinder, okay? This acts as a ramjet. So when the aircraft is flying at, 100,000 feet or whatever, the turbine engine doesn't work. So therefore it's running on ram air. Now this cone moves in and out to make the right adjustment to get the right compression going on in the engine. And this is one of the unique features that Kelly invented back in that time. Nobody else had this kind of, type of feature on an aircraft. Of course, nothing flew this high either. And that's one of the special features of the SR-71 engine. Want to be in front of one of these coming at you. Look at that. A-10 Warthog. What a mean machine in the sky. Here's another mean machine of the Vietnam era. And later on, Air Cobra. Absolutely deadly aircraft. And of course, look at its profile. It's very narrow, making it harder for a head-on shot from anti-aircraft missiles. Very difficult to shoot down, and also extremely maneuverable. This hangar behind me has a lot of sentimental reasons. And so let's go inside and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, here we go. Pull open the door. And look at this, mostly World War II aircraft, especially this aircraft sitting right here, right in front of us, a B-24 Liberator, a J model. This is what my uncle flew in World War II, and his bomb group is immortalized here in this museum, the 446. And you see the insignia up here, it says Bungie Buckaroo. Well, in the war, this was actually called Red Ass. That was the name of it, but to be politically correct, they changed the name to Bucky Bungaroo, when they brought it over here to the museum. So here's the board here with the 446 bomb group that my uncle flew in, and it's denoted by the yellow tail there with the black stripe going through it. And of course, the letters made each one was a different bomb group, and the D represent, I believe, the 307th Squadron, which is the one that my uncle was in. And he flew in the aircraft called Ronnie, which flew several missions. He got to fly about 35 missions in World War II. And then after that, he went on to Korea to fly more missions in a B-29. And you see here a list of people here that have sort of been immortalized, those people who have lost their lives from this bomb group during World War II. So yeah, let's go in here and take a look at this and get into some more of the details. On the front end of the J model, there's a rotating turret up here with two 50 caliber machine guns. I got an opportunity to actually fly in a B-24 Liberator by the Collings Foundation and got to sit up in this thing during flight. It was absolutely a spectacular view. And then down below here is the bombardier section. Now, to get to the bombardier section of this aircraft, you actually had to crawl on your belly to go underneath the cockpit where the pilots were sitting and to come all the way up to the front. And of course, the window's a little cloudy, so it's hard to kind of see in here to see the Norton bomb sight that's inside. But the bombardier actually had to lay on his belly to work with this. And here's the tail turret, made by Sperry, and of course it had twin 50 caliber machine guns. Here we're just peering into the waist gunner position on the left side of the aircraft. Another view of the waist gunner inside, looking out towards the left of the aircraft. You can see down the middle there, you can see that little crane apparatus. That is the ball turret sitting there. They were able to raise and lower the ball turret, during flight, so that way it wouldn't get damaged on landing. And then down below we have the ball turret sitting right here. This is a Sperry ball turret, again with 50 caliber machine guns. And of course, it pivoted on the underside of the aircraft to help protect it. Here we're just kind of looking up towards the bomb bay section. This is the rear section of the aircraft. There's one of the bombs demonstrated there on the rack. There's actually two bomb bay sections in this aircraft, one forward and one aft. And it gets a little crowded in here. As you can see, all the different framework. It wasn't made for comfort. It was designed for one kind of mission and one mission only. And here you can kind of see, I'll tip it down. You can see this little catwalk right here. This catwalk is literally 12 inches across. And if you were to walk on that thing, which I've done before, it's pretty amazing. It's really tight going through this. You got to be a pretty thin person. Another interesting point about the B-24 Liberator and its twin rudder system up here is that the aircraft technically was not very stable at high altitudes. And so therefore in the box formation, the aircraft had to stay further apart from each other so that way, so they don't end up colliding, because the twin rudders actually sit in the prop wash of the engines right here, unlike the B-17, which has a single rudder over the fuselage. So therefore it was a little more unstable at that higher altitude. And of course with that, consequently, the Luftwaffe knew that too. And so they were an easier target to hit than the box formation of the B-17. So a lot of these aircraft were shot down during World War II. Now, like I said, my uncle who flew these, he flew Ronnie for all the missions, and actually Ronnie went on to fly more missions and returned to the United States after World War II. Behind me is one of the most popular cargo aircraft of World War II, the DC-3 or C-47 aircraft, twin engine aircraft used for hauling cargo all the way across the ocean to Europe and also into Asia for World War II. Here's a beautiful rendition of a Hawker Hurricane. Behind me is a B-29 Super Fortress. This is an aircraft that my uncle flew after World War II, after he was flying B-24 Liberators in Europe. And of course he was flying this in Korea. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. Look at those big radial engines. There's the nose gear. Here's the bombardier section. Now, unlike other World War II aircraft, the B-29 was actually higher tech. You see the waist gunner position right up here? It's all mechanically operated. There's no gunner sitting there. It's all operated through a series of electronics and everything to target the aircraft that are trying to attack it. And we see the rear 50 caliber machine gun position. And again, the same thing. It's all automated. So there's no tail gunner actually sitting back there, just like the B-17 and B-24s. Now here's a look at inside the bomb bay compartment. Now this aircraft, unlike other World War II craft, had a pressurized cabin. So there you can see the glass window, okay? And then above me is this little tube. And this was a tube that went through the bomb bay section to the aft part of the aircraft. So therefore the bomb bay section was not pressurized while the other side was. And so that tube would extend all the way down beyond the second bay towards the tail gun section. Here we are looking up from the rear bomb bay area, and we can see that same tube up there going back to the tail gunner section. And they had to crawl through that tube to get back there. Pretty amazing. And of course, those yellow things that you see hanging there, those are oxygen tanks. So if you were working in the bomb bay section, you know, of course, you're at 25, 30,000 feet. The air is pretty thin up there, so you needed to use oxygen. One of the most badass fighters of World War II, this is the P-51 Mustang D model. Very, very good aircraft. It had such efficiency that it could fly into enemy territory where other fighter aircraft could not, like the P-47 and things. They couldn't reach that. And of course, with extended tanks, they could take this aircraft all the way into Berlin. And they could follow the bombing squadrons out there. Beautiful aircraft. Here we are peering down the nose of a DC-2 or C-46 aircraft, very similar to the DC-3, Used in World War II as well as a cargo plane to transport troops to the theaters. Really amazing aircraft. Look at the size of that engine there. 4-bladed props. Huge, huge wingspan. Stretching all the way out. Of course, we'll just kind of walk underneath here. Look at that massive landing gear right there too. That's almost 4 feet tall there, that tire. Back here is the cargo loading section. Of course, on the other side of the aircraft, it's even more so. Massive rudder and horizontal stabilizer. Very good flying aircraft. I've seen one of these in the air before. It's pretty cool. Perhaps one of the most important fighter aircraft of the Korean War is the F-86 Sabre, first Sabre jet. Beautiful aircraft. Look at those cannons coming off the side there. And here is its counterpart, the MiG-15. So these two aircraft are actually having combat over Korea in a place called Mig Alley. Behind me here is the B-25 Mitchell, kind of a medium bomber, very popular in World War II, especially in the Pacific Theater. A friend of my dad actually got to fly one of these in combat, and he was it wasn't part of the Doolittle raid, but he flew under the command of Doolittle afterwards. Now this B-25 that he flew, he had just flown into Hickam Field down there in Hawaii, and not more than a few days later, that's when the Japanese attacked on December 7th. So, 1941. So his airplane was lost on the tarmac of the airfield, so he had to wait till he got another one in. So just a little quick story about that. So let's go take a closer look at this aircraft. Here's a closer view of the nose section with a 50 caliber machine gun. And of course, you had a single person sitting up here operating the machine gun as well as the bomb sight. Look at that, pretty cool, huh? There's the Norden bomb sight down there. You can see it right there. Come over the top here so you get a little better view. The top gun positioned on top of the fuselage, two twin 50 caliber machine guns. The pilot sat in a seat and would pivot around in order to shoot as target. The aircraft also included a waist gun on each side, and of course here we have it sealed off. And then back here we also had a tail gunning section. Now in this particular aircraft, when it was flying, they actually had to get in their positions beforehand because there wasn't, unlike the B-17, there wasn't like a tunnel that you could, or a catwalk that you could walk through to get to the front and the back. So you had to be already in your position before your mission began. Before us now is a great flying boat called the PBY Catalina. And this aircraft was noted for rescuing a lot of servicemen during World War II. And even further out in other ventures. You see it's got a little nose gun up here for protection. It really wasn't that much of a protected aircraft, so it had to be sometimes escorted out in its missions to rescue a lot of the people that were stranded out in the ocean. Here's a grand view of the showroom floor in this building. All the different aircraft out there. Of course, the B-25 Mitchell sitting right in front here. Looks like a T-6 trainer up there on top. And that looks like, I don't think that's a Spitfire, I think that's a Hurricane. A good part of the museum is actually outdoors. And as you can see, as I'm kind of swinging around here, we just got miles and miles of aircraft down here. So we'll kind of walk through this and take a look. Behind me is a Lockheed Constellation, more commonly known as a Connie. And it's a passenger aircraft, 4-engine, radial engine, with 3 rudders on the back end of it. And it was in service in the 1950s and the 1960s. Just take a little stroll around the Connie here. TWA, Trans World Airlines, of course, they're no longer in business. Beautiful aircraft. Too bad they don't have these things flying anymore. And there's our triple rudders back there. Check out this beast. It has counter-rotating props on it. This is called an Avro MK2. It was built back in 1951, so it's a kind of an early Cold War aircraft. Obviously, I think the turret underneath there is for radar. Pretty interesting. Behind me sits a B-36 bomber. This is one of the early Strategic Air Command bombers for the Cold War. And unique about this, it has a swept-back wing, very similar to a B-52. However, it has propellered engines that are pushers in the back. So let's go take a closer look. In order to get this heavy bomber off the ground, they use two twin turbine engines on each wingtip to help with the thrust to get it off the ground. This aircraft is sort of a transition, if you would. It's got the, you see the three pusher motors right here, pushing propellers back here, and it has the long fuselage like a B-29 Super Fortress, as well as the tail section. Of course, this is all greatly enlarged compared to the B-29. One of the earlier versions of Cold War bombers is the B-47. Now, the B-47 was in very short service, similar to the B-36, until the B-52 came out. So this is very similar looking to the B-52. Behind me is the B-52 Stratofortress bomber. This aircraft is actually still in service today. It's amazing. I think it has the longest service record of all aircraft because they're still using it. Amazing. Of course, it's gone through various iterations of different designs and technologies and stuff, and still a platform for bombing today. Of course, this was developed during the Cold War. So let's go ahead and have a closer look. Here's just another view of the cockpit section and just panning down the fuselage and to the two sets of twin turbojet engines on each side. Let's just take a trip down Harrier Alley. Look at all these Harriers sitting here. Oh my gosh. Complete fleet, different varieties of Harriers. Amazing. There's a lot of aircraft in this world, but one I love absolutely the most, I mean, is on the top of my list, exists in this building behind me. So Jeff, are you with me? Let's go in and check it out. And here it is, the B-17 Flying Fortress, one of the big workhorses of World War II. And this is a G model because you can tell by the chin turret underneath, as well as the cheek gunning positions. Okay, so this is a more advanced model. There's been many iterations of the B-17 since its manufacturing back in 1936, and this is one of the penultimate ones. And here we have I'll Be Around. Beautiful aircraft. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's flying as it is right now, just sitting statically in this hangar. Just an amazing machine developed by Boeing. Here's a look at the bombardier position. Notice the flat glass window. That way the Norden bomb sight had a really clear vision of its target. It wasn't distorted or anything. Right underneath it is the chin turret, which has two Browning 50 caliber machine guns. And here are the engines of it. This is the 1820 Wright Whirlwind engines. Develops about 1,200 horsepower. If you'll notice, the cheek guns are offset on each side, okay? One's further back than the other. The right side is further back than the other one. And that's because when you had two people up front, you had room for both people to be operating the guns as well as whoever's, you know, in the bombardier seat. That's actually the toggleer running the chin turret here. Here's looking over the top of the wing, heading down the fuselage down to the waist gunner positions, and also underneath is the Sperry ball turret, which we'll get into in just a few minutes. And you can see the rudder back here. Now the rudder is different than some of the early iterations, and that's because in the early models it was more of a semi-elliptical rudder, but it had problems at higher altitude with controlling the yaw. So by increasing the dorsal component of the rudder, it actually made the aircraft more stable, so that way they could fly in tighter box formations, especially you know, when they're doing their raids, and especially at high altitudes of 25,000 feet and higher. I'm going to show you something unique about the B-17G model, is that this is the left side waist gunner position, And you can see that if I bring the camera right up to the window, you can look across the fuselage onto the right side of the aircraft, and that is the right waist gunner position. Now you notice that these are offset for a purpose. So that way when these guys are swinging around with that 50 caliber machine gun in air-to-air combat, okay, they're not bumping into each other. The earlier versions like the F and the E's and things like that, they were actually directly opposed, and so the operators were actually banging into each other when they're trying to shoot down aircraft. So by this, it just made things run a little smoother inside. Here's just another deadly look at the tail gunner position on the B-17. Now they had different versions of the cowling that went over it, and also the rotating apparatus that operated the 50 cals. They had different versions of it, and this is the latest one for the G model. Now here's a shot of the tail gunner position. Now if you notice, you see the seats here. The tail gunner actually sat on his knees. This center part here is where he sat down, and his legs came out along here as he looked back. So you imagine doing an 8-hour mission on your knees like that, looking out the back end of the aircraft with those twin 50 calibers. Pretty amazing. Now, the reason why they had to sit there the whole mission is that if the aircraft, this is a cutaway version, is actually there's a tail wheel right here. And so when the tail wheel was up, nobody could get back to that back section. So the tail gunner was alone, all by himself during the entire mission. Now this is the main doorway leading into the aircraft on the right side. And here we can look inside here and take a look at the gunning positions. As I mentioned earlier, see where over here on the right side of the aircraft, where the gunning position is on that waist, and then over here is the left side of the aircraft. And see, there's plenty of room. Now, way up there in the front where you see that yellow canopy or that yellow canister right there, that is the Sperry ball turret right there. And of course, when they were up in the air, the operator would climb inside that when they got into the combat zone. And you can see the crane operation, how it would pivot and rotate around. And of course, it was operated by the gunner down below. As we swing around this direction, okay, now we have, looking back towards the aft section of the aircraft, way down there in the back, you can barely see it with all the junk in the way, is actually the tail gunner position. So as we get back to the tail section of the aircraft, here's the door that leads to the tail gunning position. So this is where the tail gunner would squeeze himself up into and then come all the way back. And there we are, and there is a look of the tail gunner position. And of course, on both sides here, these are all ammo boxes sitting right here with 50 caliber bullets. Here's a view of the Sperry ball turret, similar to the B-24 Liberator. Although a lot of times this aircraft, the ball turret was not raised up during takeoff and landings, but actually kept hanging down. Now there was a problem with this, is that if the landing gear didn't deploy, of course the ball turret got crushed, and the operator inside could be killed. Okay, and it's happened to a few of them. But you can see here we have this hatch, and this hatch allows the operator to bail out if need be, if the aircraft is going down. Let's see if we can get in a little closer position here to show you the details. Now the person that was operating this actually laid on their back, so they're sitting in a reclined position, and of course you can see the handles there to control the door that popped the door open if they had to get out. Now this is one of the hatches in which they were able to enter and exit the aircraft. Now in flight, and say the aircraft was going down because it got shot down, this door right here would actually blow off. Okay, and then the crew could escape through this section, especially the toggler up front that was running the bomb bay, or running the the bomb sight, as well as the cheek turrets and chin turrets, and then also some of the other crew. We're looking right up at the seats where the pilots are. Okay, so we're right underneath the co-pilot and pilot position, and you can look back. You can tell it's not a very fancy aircraft. I mean, there wasn't a lot of luxury in here. It was designed for one thing and one thing only, and that was to drop bombs. Unbelievable. You see all the cables up here? Those cables operate all the flight control surfaces. Unlike today's aircraft that uses hydraulics, the B-17 and the B-24 Liberator all used cable. Very, very simple system, okay? And of course, you can see those cables flowing down the side of the fuselage, heading down to the control surfaces on the elevator, rudder, and ailerons. And of course, those yellow tanks, those are oxygen tanks. So when they're flying at 25,000 feet, they need to be on air. And of course, their flight suits were electric, so they stayed warm. Of course, the temperature up there, it could be down to like -20, -40 degrees. Here we have a couple of bombs that are displayed in the bomb bay area on the racks there. And if you can look up off to the side here, there's this, it's like a walkway. That's the catwalk. It's only about 12 inches in width. And of course, the crew would pass up and down going from the forward to the aft section of the aircraft. Now, I've been on that catwalk in a B-17 in the air, and it's quite an eerie experience to look through it and actually look through the crack of the bomb bay doors and see the ground below you. It's a really weird experience. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video of the Pima Air Museum down here in Tucson, Arizona, and I hope you get a chance to come out and check this out. If you haven't been there, it is definitely worth your time. Expect to spend at least a couple of days down here to see it all, because there's a lot of detail and everything. So if you like this video, be sure to click on that like button and also hit the share button, so that way you can share it with all your friends. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the little bell, so that way you can get future updates on all my videos. And until next time, we'll see you later.